Hi, welcome to last part of our course, Windows Server 2012, Part 17. Topic for today is around RDS services. Remote desktop services in Windows Server 2012. RDS services has enhanced support for the following scenarios: unified, simplified, low-cost virtual desktop infrastructure or VDI deployment, unified, simplified, low-cost session virtualization deployment, and centralized resource publishing, rich user experience with RemoteFX. So theoretically, this is similar to Citrix, XenHub, and XenDesktop. Let's have a look at each one of these in more details. Virtual desktop. There are three types of virtual desktop in Windows Server 2012: pooled, personal, session desktop. Pooled virtual desktop help you to log on to any virtual desktop in the virtual desktop pool and get the same experience with pooled virtual desktop. User personalization is stored in a user profile disk. Personal virtual desktop are permanently assigned to a user account, and users log on to the same virtual desktop each time to log on to get fully personalized experience. Session desktop take the advantages of the session virtualization capability in Server 2012. This is like a high level how that will look like. High availability for your VDI deployment. Remote desktop session or remote desktop services in 2012 provide support for highly available virtual desktop collection by leveraging a clustered environment. RD connection broker plays a central role for remote desktop service scenario by providing user access to the virtual desktop and remote app program in virtual desktop collection. With Windows Server 2012, you can deploy clustered instance of RD connection broker for high availability and improved scalability. With a centralized database, the RD connection broker service now only needs to be configured once. Any additional RD connection broker server that are added to the deployment will be added as an active instance. If one of the RD connection broker server in the cluster fail, users are not impacted because they are redirected to another RD broker. Session virtualization. Many customers are deploying RD sessions or server to reduce the total cost of ownership involved traditional desktop deployment. A session virtualization deployment consists of RD session host server and infrastructure such as RD license, RD connection broker, gateway, and web access. In previous version of Windows Server, the deployment of a RD session host server farm could be a time-consuming task because you had to be pre-install RD session host role service for each server. Also, 28 R2 ongoing on management of RD session host farm was done by per server level. In 2012, session virtualization deployment scenario was created to enable centralized installation and management from a single pane of glass. Session collection referred to as a farm previous version on Windows Server are grouped in RD session host servers. A session collection is used to publish one of the following resources, either session desktop or remote app program. Session virtualization, unified centralized experience. You can deploy session virtualization in few hours by using commodity hardware. Simplified and centralized deployment to create the entire session collection at one time. User personalization, centralized and unified management, fair share experience, network fair share, disk fair share, CPU fair share, everything around equal distribution and utilization of bandwidth and resources. Centralized resource publishing. In 28 R2, publishing and managing application on a pooled and personal virtual desktop is a time consuming. So what improvement Microsoft have introduced to around this area? RDS in 2012 enable you to publish and manage resources such as remote app program, session-based desktop, and virtualized desktop from a centralized console. With a new publishing feature in centralized console, you can see a historic view of resource assigned and publish through the environment. Centralized resource publish provide end users with experience that can replace local installation. In addition to publishing and managing resource from the centralized console, you can configure remote app and desktop connection URL by using GPOs. Rich user experience with RemoteFX. In 28, Windows Server SP1 introduced RemoteFX to enable directly fully Windows Server experience. In 2012, built on a platform to enable richer and more seamless experience. RDP in 2008 or Windows 2008 introduced new capability and enhanced several existing capability that deliver greater end user experience. Some of these key capabilities include superior wide area network performance with RemoteFX for one, full 3-dimension 3D window and software GPU, rich desktop remoting experience, and smoother media playback experience. And last is rich client-side device support for FX. RemoteFX 4.1 RDP in 2008 has been optimized to work better to utilize lower bandwidth, high latency connection through in addition following features. So if I have low bandwidth, high latency, how RDP around RemoteFX has been improved. User Datagram Protocol UDP transport. RDP in 2008 or Windows 8 intelligently chooses between TCP and UDP transport depending on the component type, on the content type, and the quality of the connection, which means we need 3389 port and the Windows firewall to enhance and control the netting. RemoteFX Network Auto Detect. RemoteFX Network Auto Detect determines the amount of available bandwidth between the client and server. RemoteFX Network Auto Detect automatically enabled by using RDC connection. What about the adaptive graphics? RemoteFX adaptive graphics, a new feature in Windows 8. It enables seamless delivery of virtual desktop and remote app program using Windows I/O and 3D experience. Two of these key features that are enabled by RemoteFX adaptive graphic are RemoteFX progressive download and Windows I/O and 3D experience through Microsoft Render Driver. By default, RemoteFX graphic processing pipeline will adaptively determine the optimal RDP experience. RemoteFX media streaming and multi-touch. RemoteFX media streaming enables smooth multimedia experience on a network where bandwidth is limited and latency is high. The key feature is in RemoteFX media streaming are smooth video playback, which utilize H.264 encoded video streaming. RemoteFX media streaming require RD or desktop experience feature. RemoteFX multiple touch. RDP in Windows 8 introduced true multiple touch and gesture remoting with support for up to 10 simultaneous touch inputs. This enables users to use the new touch and gesture enabled application in RDP or remote desktop environment. Using USB redirection in Windows 2008 R2 server, RemoteFX utilize RD USB redirection was only supporting virtual desktop by using RD Virtualization host role service. In Server 2012, configuring RemoteFX USB redirection for RD session host uses the same configuration steps involving in USB redirection for RD Virtualization host. There's a link for more information about step-by-step guide how you can do this, but the following list of devices that can be utilized for RemoteFX USB redirection. All-in-one printer, scanner, biometric, webcam, VoIP, telephone, and handset. Last is around the RemoteFX virtual GPU. RemoteFX VGPU enable admin to share physical GPU on Hyper-V server across multiple virtual machines. This feature enable remote desktop graphic experience similar across the pool. The Hyper-V server and the RemoteFX enable virtual desktop must meet the RemoteFX hardware requirement. The requirements have not changed for the Server 28 with the following requirement. They include ensuring the hyper-threading technology is enabled on the Hyper-V server, configure the proper memory as required per the Windows 2008 requirement. If you are using an x86 based virtual machine, you must configure at least 1 megabyte of RAM. If you are using x64, you need at least double the amount, which is 20 for 80 or 2 meg of RAM. So 2048 of RAM, 2 gig. Ensure that the built-in match of the RemoteFX server, the virtual desktop, and the client computer. More link around this. That was all what I had for you today. Hopefully you learned something useful around the RDS. And that was the last part of our series for Windows Server 2012. Next will be Windows Server 2016, and we will be covering the same topics and the new improvements around security, implementation, which I will suggest to read about because it's definitely worth, you know, either migrating or planning to migrate 2016 due to the security improvement and the other improvement around DNS, AD, and the clustering side of it. Hopefully you enjoyed watching this series, and thank you very much, and hopefully to see you at the next